I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now, and I have the pleasure of sitting here with Dan Albas, our MP that sits in Parliament. And you're home for kind of summer break, and you're kind of like working and talking to your constituents.
Yep. Already started the summer listening tour.
There you go, summer listening tour. That sounds good, right?
Yeah.
People definitely need to be heard.
Well, this year I'm especially going to the doors. So I've already been door knocking in Kelowna, particularly the South Kelowna side and West Kelowna. Going to be been asked to kind of reach out to some adjacent areas too. So I'm sure Penticton, Vernon, watch out. I will soon be coming to you.
So I'm going to start off with the big one, and then this was the one that kind of rocked the political world, and that's the by-election in Ontario.
Yes.
That was a surprise win for you guys, for the Conservatives, and I think people now, even in the media, started to hear the voices of Canadians.
Well, and this is the thing, is you got to remember the week before when he was pressed at a CBC interview, one-on-one, the Prime Minister said Canadians aren't in decision mode right now. A week later, the good people of Toronto, St. Paul were in decision mode, and they elected Don Stewart, who, my understanding, he's been living there since 2016, raises his kids there. And really, it's just a great example of reaching out to everyone. And the message is pretty clear. Canadians are not happy with Justin Trudeau.
And that's a Liberal stronghold, one that they thought would be a kind of like an easy cakewalk in there. NDP did not do well in there either. It was tight, but the Conservatives won that seat. And I think it's a strong message. I know the media picked it up because now they've turned their attention on Trudeau, as many in his party have now started to make some noise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to your point, Jim, we have not held that riding, I believe, since the early 90s. So Liberals have represented that area for a long, long time. In 2021, Carolyn Bennett, the former member of Parliament for Toronto St. Paul, she won by 22 points ahead of the Conservatives. Yeah. So this is a massive swing. And look, it just goes back to that elections matter. But I will just simply say this, is that many of the things that we've been pointing out in the House of Commons were raised at the doors: housing, the issues of affordability, and people really wanted to send Justin Trudeau a message. Now, from the sounds of it, Chrystia Freeland has said that they're reflecting and they're drawing messages on, and they have to work harder. I think that, quite honestly, they've lost the plot.
I think for 9 years, and my personal thoughts on this is, for 9 years they've been speaking at us. And now they say they're going to listen, and I like that you're saying you're here on, you're out here listening to your constituents. I don't think they've done a lot of that listening. I think that is a wake-up call for many in that party, that they see maybe them not even being the second party in the next election.
Yeah, and to be fair, Jagmeet Singh also has to bear some responsibility because they got 10.9%, right? Yeah. So, and usually it's like this: when the Liberals are high, the NDP are low, and vice versa. Yeah. But again, affordability, some other,
pocketbook issues, right?
Oh yes,
yes,
absolutely.
The things that are the dinner table stuff, the gas in the car, the food on the table, and all those things, and the roof over your head, kind of the stuff that you can't ignore. If we can't provide those basics, and we live in Canada, we should be able to provide those basics for ourselves, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where, again, Pierre Poilievre has been talking about the deal. The deal was, if you went to school, you got a job, you worked hard, you saved up, scrimped and saved your way, you'd be able to get into a home, start a family.
Right.
And that model is broken under Justin Trudeau. So I just read the other day that the record high for a one-bedroom apartment in Kelowna, it's now, for a one-bedroom, is around $2,100 a month. And I think it was mentioned, you just off the start of the program, just before we started, that if you look at the May numbers for the Consumer Price Index, rents went up quite massively. And so who's renting? Well, it's young people. It's people that are starting. So, like, for example, we have a nurse shortage. We have a healthcare shortage. If someone's coming to make Kelowna their home, where are they going to start if they can't get an affordable rental? And then lastly, you have lots of seniors where, for whatever reason, someone moves and they say to the senior who's on a fixed income, you have to leave. Where did they go?
Yeah, so I did an interview earlier today. I recommend you go watch it. It was on a Calgary finance guy, and he's talking about stagflation, and he talked about like all the things that are wrong with Canada, and he said it's going to be a tough job for even if your government gets in and you guys govern, it's going to be a little bit of a janitorial job to kind of clean up the mess. And
Mm-hmm.
he kind of said it's bad management. Like we've like poorly managed our country, and we poorly managed our resources. And I guess that if you guys are successful when the election is called, like where do you start?
Well, again, inflation right now. The first thing you do when you have an inflationary fire is you stop pouring gasoline all over
I think
the
that's
fire,
what he said.
and essentially, when you have Justin Trudeau doing back-to-back budget where every year they talk about fiscal discipline, and yet the deficit is larger every year. And let's bear in mind that Justin Trudeau has to fulfill Jagmeet Singh's wish list.
Mm-hmm.
And the wish list is for more spending in the economy. And this is the problem, is that the other day the RCMP arrested and pressed charges against a contractor for the government of Canada for overbilling $250,000. We've seen contracting under Justin Trudeau just grow immensely under this government. And they're the ones that said that they wouldn't do it. But now we have billions of dollars going out the door. And I don't think, Jim, people are even watching. And so you have cases of these billing. So that's one of the things Pierre said first. We have a public service. The expectation should be that the public service is capable of doing some of this work. And we shouldn't just be going out to consultants because they're well connected.
They don't seem to want to be held accountable. The other big news that isn't coming out is who are the MPs that have been accused of basically treason, and why haven't they been named, and why aren't we doing something about it?
Sure. So we are doing something about it, and despite Justin Trudeau, like, look, when we first started having these allegations of foreign interference, Justin Trudeau said there's nothing to see here. Everything we've done so far, we've put up a new committee of parliamentarians to study the national security intelligence operations in Canada. Everything is fine. We've done more than anyone. But yet you had consistent leaks coming out of places like CSIS. And so when we pushed the government on it, they refused to have an inquiry to look into these matters because there's allegations that were put out bare on the front page of the Globe and Mail that the Prime Minister and his cabinet saw intelligence reports and did nothing, that we had foreign interference in our elections in 2019 and again in 2021, and that there was actually allegations of money going illegally being funneled to Chinese, I should say, Beijing government-directed agents. And so this has been a big mess for a long time. And so we've pushed them to introduce legislation, which we have, and we've supported. It's Bill C-70 that has a foreign agent registry, something conservatives have been asking for more than 4 years. And then also he finally crumbled and gave in to Justice Hogue to run a commission. So this latest allegation, 11 parliamentarians, we don't know if they're still sitting. There's a mention of one former parliamentarian, so it could be a senator, it could be a House of Commons. And essentially, the committee that the Prime Minister himself set up, and it's an all-party committee, both Senate and House of Commons, said that there were specific allegations of specific people. They named the names in the original report. And so I just want to reiterate how important this is. They named names after studying all of the intelligence. And if you actually read the report, they looked over 33,000 different intelligence reports, brought in the people that did many of the reports, asked them specific questions, gave a report to the Prime Minister naming those individual members of Parliament or senators, current or former. And what did the Prime Minister do? He sat on it and then redacted most of it and then published it months later.
Isn't this the government that ran on accountability?
Well, he used to say sunny ways, sunshine is the best disinfectant. Right. And this is the difference between, I don't know if Justin Trudeau today was to run into Justin Trudeau from 2015, I don't know if they would be able to even say, oh, that's me. They wouldn't recognize each other.
They seem to have stymied all the investigations going way back, including like the Winnipeg Labs, the We Charity. All these things seem to be unanswered,
Yes.
And
So I just want to say to your audience, though, because this is an important point, I believe that there's a cloud, a shadow over all parliamentarians. And so I believe the name should come forward. I think that that's important. I think that if the allegations are made public, people then can defend themselves, and then the public can decide. But what we've had to do, though, is like in any minority government situation, we've had to do some horse trading. And the Bloc and the NDP refused to go ahead with that. So now it's the names have been, the intelligence has been submitted to Justice Hogue, who's doing an inquiry on foreign interference. And she's accepted the request and will report back to the Canadian public. I don't know when, I don't know under whether or not they're going to be naming names. But this is as serious as it gets, Jim, because it's said in the report, semi-wittingly or wittingly. That means people either
they were doing.
kind of knew or with eyes wide open knew exactly what they were doing, and that they were working not for the Canadian people, but for a foreign agent or their government or that government.
Should not an MP just based on their own morals bring it forward if they were even accused, if they think they're innocent, and just kind of clear their name just on their own, and or step down at least until it's been cleared?
Well, this is the thing is that one MP who's a former Liberal, now sits as an independent, MP Hung from Toronto, one of the Toronto ridings, Don Valley North, I believe. He's stepped back publicly because there were, again, the CSIS leaks I mentioned in the Globe and Mail. And there's currently a lawsuit going on in regards to Global News' reporting. I should say it was Global News that broke the story originally to him. But this is the problem, is that, semi-wittingly, we don't know what that means. And so this is where, again, the allegations and the names, I believe, should come forward. But at least I'm assured that someone independent of Justin Trudeau, that means not under Justin Trudeau's redaction ability.
Gets to see it all.
Yeah, gets to see it all. There has been some issues, though, with Justice Hogue, where she has publicly called the government out to release more cabinet confidences because she was told originally when she'd run it by the public safety minister that she would have full access. And that has not been the case, and that needs to be remedied.
Can we expect transparency from a Conservative government?
Oh, well, we've been saying right from the very get-go that we believe that the names should be brought forward. We were actually demanding in the House of Commons that the Prime Minister name names. And this is the problem we have right now, is that Justin Trudeau simply hides behind redacted reports. Now, Parliament could, and I'm just saying this as a legislator because I've looked into this, Parliament could do a production order demanding an unredacted National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians report, the report that made the allegations, unredacted. And we could even have a committee of MPs that could look at the documents and go through it. Now, the Prime Minister has offered these various ways of doing it through a Treasury Board process. Jim, the moment you sign on to that, you effectively lock your mouth and throw away the key. And if you utter anything in any public space under those rules, you can be charged, even though members of Parliament, we have parliamentary privilege. But if you agree to that process, you are suddenly beholden to the same as any other public servant. I think that is not the right way to do it. Mr. Trudeau could order right now to give a full briefing to any MP he designates because he's the Prime Minister. They don't have to use this process. And then if an MP or a senator was to say the names out loud, then that senator or that member of Parliament would have parliamentary privilege. I know that some intelligence services and even the commissioner of the RCMP have said that there would be consequences, not in those cases, as long as that person has parliamentary privilege. And this is one thing that the Minister of Justice has been very quiet and has not made too many statements in regards to this. Because ultimately, the laws of the land relate to Parliament, and Parliament should basically, if it orders it, that parliamentary privilege exists to protect parliamentarians for exactly these kinds of situations.
Let's move on to the three-headed monster.
Yeah, yes.
Pierre put out an ad on that, or a piece of work on that, saying he's going to slay the three-headed monster.
Yes.
Part of that reflects on us, obviously, Bill C-18 and Bill C-63, and what's the other bill?
So C18 or C11,
C11.
C18, and
Yeah.
C63. And when we talk about the three-headed monster, essentially these are the bills that have given government unheralded powers over the internet that put us in a league that are closer to dictatorships like Russia or China, because those countries have incredible censorship abilities. So no other Western country, including places in Europe, has this type of regime. So I just really want to point out how massively this has changed under Justin Trudeau.
And then for us on Bill C18, it seems like we don't qualify for the journalism credit, but it seems like a lot of the other media don't make a lot of noise at it because they're getting a lot of money, kind of like help, and it just kind of almost like, do you know what I mean? Like they're just like, well, you know, it's bad, but it's, you know.
Well, this is the problem. Like C18, for your viewers, basically has caused Facebook to leave the market for news.
Well, it's banned us. It's banned us from sharing content on a platform that we've earned over the past, whatever, how long we've been in business, about 15 years or something like that.
Yeah. So you'll send Kent Mulgat to go report on a fire situation. He's going to bring people up to date on the Kelowna Now website. Yeah. And they can't see the information on Facebook.
So we grew that audience on Facebook and Instagram to 200,000. And then with this, they decided that we can't have access to it. And based on the criteria of the government, they say we're not a news organization. Mm-hmm. And then based on the criteria that Facebook uses, says we are a news organization. So we're kind of stuck in this in this mess. And then it also affects the safety and security of people in the community when we have fires and all kinds of stuff. They can't access information because it should be readily available. I mean, it's kind of, when we talk to people in Facebook, like at Facebook, that can make decisions in the United States, they're just like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense to them, right? So,
well, so this is the thing. So C18 refers to Facebook specifically. And we, the Conservative Party, are against it. All the other parties voted in favor of it. And despite, at committee, we would bring in new independent media outlets, usually that are founded on the internet. So the legacy players, like you said, were curiously very quiet or openly supportive. And it was only the smaller news centers, the newer ones, that felt that they were going to be pushed out. And guess what? The government was warned. And those critics were right. It wasn't a conservative plot, as the Minister of Heritage had said, that to disinform people. It literally was that their framework that they have are now hurting businesses like yours.
And then we have done a number of stories on Bill C18, including we interviewed one of the top media lawyers in Canada on it, and he said the Liberals are just stubborn and they don't want to change it. And Facebook isn't. And if you go look at the Facebook stock chart, they're doing extremely well. It's not like they need Canada, and they've said that, right? And and the relationship for us and Facebook and everybody else, including the CBCs and CTVs and all that, we all willingly put our content on Facebook because we got traffic from it. Mm-hmm. Facebook didn't steal any content. We put it there
with no paywall because you wanted to have people come and
we used it as like we're swimming with a shark, and we put it there, and then they brought it. And their comment was like, well, you should be paying us, and we're just like, it's a symbiotic relationship. Yeah. But it's been severed. So for us, it's really important to see some movement on Bill C18. We don't really want the money. I mean, if they're going to keep us sequestered, then they should give us the money that they give everybody else, because we have one of the most experienced newsrooms in Kelowna.
Yes.
And then, but we'd rather nobody get money and that we just be allowed to operate in a free environment.
So a free environment is exactly what Pierre Poilievre. So when he talks about making Canada the freest country in the world, he's specifically citing C18, C11, and C63. Now, for people that are watching, C11 essentially gave the CRTC massive powers. Now, again, the CRTC is now putting together a whole new bureaucracy, and they're going to start regulating podcasts. Now, they said this wouldn't happen, but they have now put out foreign guidance on it. And guess what, though? They're going to make sure those new rules come in after the next election, after October in 2025. And then C63 is before the House right now. And again, the government wants to create a new bureaucratic machine. So if someone is harassing a child online, if someone is causing harm to that child online, I think all of us would agree that child needs to be protected and the person needs to be held responsible. But what they're doing, Jim, is they're essentially creating a bureaucratic system that will give that person a speeding ticket, the equivalent of a speeding ticket. What conservatives want to see is we want to see the justice system and our laws brought up so that we can now start charging these people. So deep fakes, for example, that is a big problem. There are a number of cases of Canadian women as well as American women where they have a picture of them and posted online, and it's disturbing because AI can create
reputational damage.
Oh, it's huge.
Stuff, right?
And so there are things that the government can do to bring into effect right now so that the police can track them down and then bring them to a court of law and hold these people accountable. So conservatives believe that we need to update our laws, not create new bureaucracies that actually trivialize deep fake, especially on vulnerable people like women who have intimate pictures that are shared, or like I said, where their face is transposed onto another body. Right. There's some disturbing things, and you know what? And this is where I think all Canadians agree: children need protecting, but it has to be something that has teeth.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. This is a little provincial. Well, it is provincial, but it's your riding. It affects people in your riding.
Yes.
We're seeing in the past couple of weeks, we're seeing emergency room closures.
Okay.
In rural areas, Oliver, Merritt, I can't remember all of them, Williams Lake, all these places. And the one that we put out this morning was they were told that they could go to Bella Coola if they needed services, which is 450 kilometers away. And this is like, the lack of one nurse, lack of one doctor, and all this stuff. And we're in BC is I believe the only provincial jurisdiction that still has a vaccine mandate, still not allowing people to go back to work. And the stuff we get back from Interior Health or the BC government is that there's a small group of people that would affect the safety of the individuals in the hospital care. But it doesn't make sense when I interviewed a doctor that practices in Rutland. He sees patients, 1,200 of them, and if he has to refer to the hospital, he has to orphan them. So he can practice in his practice, but he can't practice in the hospital. And then even the BC government, we don't have enough room to care for cancer patients. We're sending them to Washington to be treated, which doesn't have a vaccine mandate. So if we're so worried about the care of our patients, how do we send them, especially extremely vulnerable people for cancer treatments, to the United States, Washington, that doesn't have a vaccine mandate? How do they reconcile what they're saying?
So I relate it all back to what you started with. It doesn't make sense. So look, common sense conservatives, we want to start making the systems better. So first of all, I personally have said, and as my leader has said, that BC is an outlier. We have the province of Quebec and Ontario. They took a look at this. They said there is more risk in maintaining these divisive mandates because these longer wait times are actually hurting patients. So they actually put their ideology aside and they said, let's go with a risk-based method. And they said, okay, the risks are clearly that it's better to have more nurses who can help alleviate our healthcare challenges.
I would say it's a crisis, like for the rural communities, and it seems like sometimes with the NDP that they don't really care much past the Lower Mainland.
Well, again, this is the thing: is other provincial governments have set aside their ideological blinders and said, you know what, we need to run a healthcare system, not an ideological sense system. And so so we've already called for them to hire them back. That is a decision that Minister Dix and the Premier need to be accountable for to those communities. For example, Merritt is a community that is very hard hit by this and is in my riding. So the second thing I would just simply say is this is where it touches on the federal power. So right now, my leader is going around the country speaking to people, nurses, doctors, etc. We've come up with a blue seal program, similar to Red Seal. So if you're in the trades, you can work anywhere across Canada because your one ticket says you can do it. We believe the same should apply to healthcare. But if you're in Ontario and you try to come through to BC, suddenly you couldn't work in BC because of this mandate. And so that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So they could be perfectly certified, everything could be checked off, but because they didn't meet the NDP's ideological test, we are now putting policies in front of people. Policies should always serve people, not the other way around. And that's where we're really stuck at right now.
So the federal government can put some pressures on the province to make those changes?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're using our soapbox, and the soapbox is hire them back. Yeah. Because you can't have it where these smaller communities, if someone cuts their arm logging, how are the heck they supposed to get to Kamloops in time to save an arm?
And they say it's a small group, but one would help. In those communities, it's one. They close it because of one, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not like like telling somebody. I don't want to get emotional about it, but telling somebody to drive 5 hours instead of getting care where they should be getting care is they should be moving doctors from the Lower Mainland and nurses out there and fixing that, as opposed to just saying, well, it's closed.
Yeah. No, as a member of parliament, I've had international doctors contact my office. Oh. I put them in touch with Interior Health, and I've had good conversations with Interior Health, but they'll say, you should refer give us their information, but we'll refer them to Saskatchewan. And I said, why? Well, they come from a particular college that Saskatchewan approves, but not in British Columbia. And I go, so they can come and they can X-ray, or they can put a cast on someone's arm in Saskatchewan, but they can't do it in British Columbia. And they said, member, that's just our rules. And I said, so why would you refer it to them? Well, because then they refer people to us, is what I was told. And so this is where, again, Pierre Poilievre has been really leading on this by saying we should have one certification within 90 days, a nurse, a health practitioner, et cetera. This is already done for radiologists. This is working in North America. We have one single standard for radiologists in North America. We should be doing the same within Canada with all the other health professions. Common sense.
I'm going to end with this, I think, unless there's something else you want to cover. But if we think of the government as a company, which really it is, it's the largest corporation in Canada. It's run by a CEO, and then the executive team would be all the MPs. Mm-hmm. How is the Conservative government going to run Canada differently than what many people, especially the guy that I interviewed today, saying there's mismanagement going on of our resources? We have abundant, well, probably one of the largest abundant resource is in the world, and it's not being managed correctly.
Well, look, like this is the thing is that there's going to be a huge challenge, but life wasn't like this before Justin Trudeau. He is the one that has brought these radical policies and pushed into provincial jurisdiction, creating all sorts of division in this country. And this is where first thing you do is you stop picking fights. I'll give you a great example right now. The digital sales tax that has the support of the NDP and is now in law. The American trade officials are talking about potential retaliations. Now, the reason why this is so important is we're heading into the biggest democratic cycle in the United States, one of the largest democracies, not the largest, but one of the largest democracies in the world. And suddenly we're throwing fuel on the fire. I do not want Canada now standing out because I tell you, this digital sales tax, essentially Netflix and all these other groups are saying we're going to be subject to this new tax and we're not being treated fairly like Canadian companies. And so what ends up happening, Jim, is they're right now the U.S. trade officials are looking for retaliatory tools. And so the one thing I would simply say is let's stop giving people a stick to hit us over the head with.
You brought something up, and I think I'm going to jump off of it, though. It looks like some of the polls are saying Donald Trump is going to have a landslide victory. Justin Trudeau seems to want to drive a wedge with that relationship. And then one of the things that he has said over and over again, that people don't pay their fair share in NATO, mm-hmm. that he's not going to protect them. And then it came out today. There's a story that came out that says Canada's not paying its fair share in NATO, and it seems like we've neglected our military again. And how do we reconcile that as well?
So there's two main policies for the Canadian Forces right now that were just examined by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. One is, again, the 2% NATO spend. The other one, though, is 20% new equipment for our men and women in Canadian Armed Forces. That 20% of new equipment, and both right now, the Parliamentary Budget Office says, are not credible. Look, they're showing right now to 2030, well outside of the mandate of this government, we will not meet the 2% target. Now, these are all policy decisions that Mr. Trudeau has made. But look, we have responsibilities in the world. We have responsibilities to our own folks. Military is really important. So like you said, whether we're talking domestic policy on housing, affordability, axing the tax so people can get a little bit of relief, bring it home tax cuts so that people can have a little bit more money and have more powerful paychecks. These are common sense things that we can do to help domestically. We need to shore up our image internationally. And so that's going to be a lot of hard work. This mess, you get into a bad situation, one bad decision at a time. The only way you get out of it is one good decision at a time. And I just don't think this Prime Minister has what it takes.
It seems odd. They stand up on the podium and they talk about how, Russia needs to be dealt with and how democracy is so important and how we need to fight the Russian till the end and stuff like that. And yet we don't live up to our NATO obligations.
Yeah, well, but these are policy choices. Right now, Justin Trudeau has signed a deal with the NDP. And let me tell you, military is not in it. Yeah. It's on spending all sorts of different programs. And even the programs they put in place, I talked to 2 seniors yesterday who came to my office. They have saved their whole lives. They've worked really hard. They are barely hanging on. And I asked them about the new dental program. And they said that they tried it and it didn't work for them. Yeah. And so this is the problem, is they promise all these great shiny baubles, but we're not doing the basics well, like working with our allies and making sure we have a competent, well-equipped military and that we have respect in the world. So how are we going to do things different? Common sense. We have a common sense plan. We have a leader who is able to communicate his vision. He's talking to Canadians like you started this conversation. Listening. That's how we get out of these things.
I will add one more thing because you said Merritt's in your riding. I have an interview tomorrow with the VP of Aspen Planers, another mill that's closed, and that affects your riding. That's 100 good paying jobs, again, gone. We've done a number of interviews with in the forestry industry, including the forest minister, including the opposition party and the leader of the BC Conservative Party. And they say our forestry sector is a mess, and that it's regulation and lack of access to timber that's causing it. When I talked to the forest minister, he said that's a lie. It's they just don't like the interest rates and the market.
Aspen Planer is one of the most important family-run business to a place like Merritt. They are not diversified. They're a BC forestry company. Now, we see lots of BC forestry companies. They're not leaving forestry, but they are leaving BC.
Yeah, Canfor is another one that we did the story on.
Right.
Canfor closed. They're not moving forward in their Houston project. They closed Great Bear Lake, and they're cutting shifts in PG.
And so this is what I would say is right now, Aspen Planer has been saying to me privately and through the mayor and others publicly that they have a problem with fiber. They can't get enough of it because of the way the BC policies work. John Horgan went to that community in 2016, hand on heart, said, we will never let a mill close in Merritt. Then Toko left the next year. Yeah. So this is the problem we have is when you have politicians who say hand on heart that they're going to be there for you and have your back, but then on the flip side, when it actually comes to doing the hard work and making it work so that people can put food on the table, they're nowhere to be found.
10,000 jobs lost in 1 year in the forest industry. They're the second biggest industry in British Columbia. Yeah. 10,000 jobs in 1 year.
But let me ask you this, because this is something I'm seeing more and more from both the federal and provincial government. It seems like when there is a crisis that they want to be seen to doing something, they snap to action and they're there and they're making all these commitments. Yeah. But when it comes to doing the actual work.
Lots of podium time.
Right? That's the problem. Like, look, Lytton, BC. That community is not in my riding. It's in Bradvis. It's Mission Matsqui Fraser Canyon. 3 years after that forest fire, where we had politicians and podiums around the world pointing to Lytton being an example of all that's wrong in the world. And it's devastating what's happened in the community. But 3 years later, after all the promises, 5 homes have been built.
Yeah. We should look into how much consulting has been paid out. Maybe that's another story for us to dig into.
Well, that'd be a great question to ask the MLA.
I do thank you for your time. It's been great. We should catch up more often. But
Jim, I always have, what I love is that I never know where we're going to go, but we always have a great time doing it.
No questions ahead of time.
Oh, I see what you did there.
The ones that get it will get it, right?
If you know, you know.
There you go. And we thank you for watching Kelowna Now.